archives. So thanks everyone for jumping on tonight. If we get a few more folks in, I would not be surprised because I had about 14 signed up. But I wanted to give the folks here tonight an opportunity to talk to three very influential authors, and they play other roles too, but all three of these gentlemen write and write with the language of the car enthusiast in mind. But they each have a style, and I love reading their stuff. And the reason I invited John, Clor, Brad Bowling, and Donald Farr to this meeting is because each of them had a bit of influence. Actually, I'd say more than a bit, but definitely had an impact on Mustang Bullitt generations, both the standard and the expanded edition, which includes Bullet Time, which is the 24-page supplement on the Bullitt movie cars. These guys had a hand in helping me, and I wanted just each of them to take a moment, kind of talk about their backgrounds and how they got to the things that they've done as authors in the Mustang hobby. And then as the discussion goes along, I'll ask each one of them just a few questions about how they helped and intersected this Bullitt book project. So with that, I'd like to give the floor first to Brad Bowling, because this is where I started in the journey. Although I would say that John also was not too soon, if maybe not right around the same time that Brad heard about this project to create a book on all three Mustang Bullitt tribute cars. So, Brad, if you'd like to go ahead first and just kind of roll, your background in writing. Of course, you did photography in the book as well. If you want to, talk about that a little bit, and then how you kind of rolled on up to this project here, and anything else you think might be interesting for folks to hear. Give
Okay.
the floor over to you.
Can you hear me pretty well?
Yes.
All good.
Yes.
I have that fancy microphone you sent me, Tony. So kind of got like a CBS
beautiful
broadcasting thing going on here.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Nice. But anyway, Tony contacted me a couple of years ago because I was less than an hour away from where he lives, and B, one of the folks who sort of had a long history with the surviving Bullitt Mustang number 559 that the Kiernan family owned. And I met, I'm sure a lot of you know this story, so I'm going to just kind of skip through it, and then feel free to ask any questions after if you want more details on it. But I sort of met Bob Kiernan over the phone back in 1989, and made an arrangement with him whereby he would let me publish stories about the surviving car that he owned, as long as I did not give away his information, give away his name, tell where he lived, that kind of thing. He didn't want people buying it from him at the time. He didn't want people bothering him about it. And in fact, in 1989, he was very, very surprised to find out that anyone was interested at all in his car, that they were looking for it, that the entire hobby thought that it was probably the one Mustang out there that would rule above all others if it were ever located. And so for the next several years, I wrote articles back and forth. Anytime an anniversary came along, or anytime there was some tiny little bit of new interest in the missing Bullitt cars, a magazine editor like Donald Farr would contact me and ask if I wanted to, give an update or write about it, and I would do that. And then in 19, that's right, it's the 20th century for me still. And in 2018, I got to be involved with the unveiling of it at the Detroit Auto Show. I got to go as a guest of the Kiernan family for that, and it was just a very special moment for me. And then shortly after that, I didn't realize this time because I did not know Tony then, but Tony was also at that Detroit Auto Show. Is that right, Tony? I do have that information right.
That's correct.
And so he contacted me shortly after that, once the car was out in the public, and said he was doing a book on the the 3 Bullitt feature cars, and would I be interested in talking to him about that, because I was a published author and I also own a magazine publishing company now in Ohio. And so we got together and it sounded like a great deal, and I had a great time doing it and helping Tony with that. My company published it this past year, and by all accounts, it seems to be a pretty well-received book. So I also, I guess, kind of my motivation for doing it, it turns out, was to do the supplement, the 24-page supplement that Tony referred to. And I got to talk about how I had time with 559 before it came out in the public. And we also had pages devoted to Kevin Marty having time with both 558 and 559 before they came out in public. And turns out a lot of people were kind of interested in the stories behind that. So that's kind of the short version of how I came into this.
Thanks, Brad. And one of the things I want to mention, and I want to ask you, Brad, to just talk about a little bit, is that, I've certainly seen you as a hobbyist for a while, seen your books, some of your various publications. You've been in the writing biz and the photography biz for quite a while. And I was aware of that. And coming into the effort, I thought if, someone like you would be willing to help play a role in it, that I would get the benefit of your your career and the expertise that you've developed up. And I don't know if you want to tell folks a little bit about your background, but after watching you do the editing, and then after watching the photography, the car shoots, I love if you'd share a few minutes about how you got to the level that that you've gotten to over your career.
Oh, sure. Well, in short, when I was in college, I was kind of addicted to Mustangs. Friends of mine had them. I had a '67 coupe that I barely could keep running with coat hangers and a pair of pliers on the side of the road. That actually was a literal thing. I made my 1-barrel carburetor stay together with those very two things for years. And but anyway, I started writing for the Mustang Times magazine, which is the Mustang Club of America's publication, which is now edited by Donald Farr. Is that right, Donald? You're still
there?
Still there? Good. And I quickly, in the cyclical, small community, small world way things have happened with this, I started working for Donald when he was the editor of Mustang Monthly magazine. And he gave me a lot of my breaks getting in those pages and having a sort of national publication, national newsstand publication to be involved in and, sort of learn my craft. And then from there, I was involved with other Mustang publications and companies. I went to work for Saleen Autosport in 1988 as their PR guy for a year. Went to work for Mustang Illustrated magazine, which is where I came into the Kiernan Bullitt family. And then from there, I've just done a lot of other car related things. I was the editor of Old Cars Weekly in Wisconsin for a while. I was in the PR department at Charlotte Motor Speedway, which gave me a lot of exposure to a really huge car community that Charlotte, that part of North Carolina has. And but when I remember when I first talked to Bob Kiernan about his car, one of the first people I called to talk about it with was Donald Farr, because I kind of wanted to know, am I like in over my head with this story? The guy wants me to agree to keep his identity a secret for however long this may take. He may never want to reveal the car, and I'll be writing these stories looking like a fool, for 20 years, claiming I know where the car is. I just can't tell you. And, then it never comes out in public. So it took, what was that? 18 years, I guess? No, 38 years, 28 years. I'm bad with math. That's why I didn't go into statistics or anything. So 28 years. Yeah. I kept that secret. And I guess it paid off. It made a great story. And I think if nothing else, keeping the car out of the public view turned out to be probably the best thing for it from a value sense, but also a historical significance, because it just made people want it more and more to know that it was out there, but they just couldn't see it yet.
Yeah, thank you, Brett. And I thought it was very cool that you mentioned your relationship with Donald, because Donald's had a big presence, as has John, in the hobby. And so, reaching out to you, I was excited to do that. Reaching out to John, I was excited to do that. I had only met Donald really through connections with you, Brad. Although Donald, I have, as an enthusiast, been in and out of shows and have seen you. I've got a couple of your books, the Boss 302 book, the most recent one, the revamped one, not the original small one that you did. And I just think it's great that, all these relationships and people helping people here, that you guys have shown that and done that. So thank you for sharing that. I did want to ask John Clor to go next, because as I mentioned before, I was very fortunate to have met John as an enthusiast, as part of his enthusiast outreach. He's been very instrumental in working with the Bullitt owners through the various incarnations of affiliations that have been going on actually since the second generation Mustang Bullitt. So, John, I consider you a man of certainly Mustang history, but also Mustang connections, especially at Ford. And that was a huge thing that you did for me to help facilitate some of those conversations. But you did likewise. You were the conduit for the movie car for 559 making its way in. So you're outside the story plus inside the story. And I'd love if you just share a few minutes, on both perspectives and a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks, Tony. Yeah, it's a weird life when you are handling enthusiast communications within Ford, and that wasn't my first calling. I spent 15 years writing at the Detroit News and mostly as a copy editor, and I was deemed a smartass very quickly in my career, so I was put into the sports department, which was the toy department of a major metropolitan paper. So, unfortunately, I got in the sports department when the Tigers won the World Series, and it was crazy. So I just wanted a weekend off, and I wanted to be the auto writer. In Detroit, it's cars, girls, and hockey. I would have been on the Red Wings except for the thing they call talent. And then, and I had the girl, my beautiful wife for all these years. And I just, the car thing is just part of the scene. My dad was a Detroit cop, and my older brother was a Woodward street racer. So you can imagine living in that house, how great that was. And my Mustang stories, I use this fodder for the intros to my books, because people won't believe how you back into this hobby that way. But after I left the news, I didn't want to leave the paper. I wanted to work on and play with cars and write about them. And so when Auto Week magazine went calling, that's Detroit's, that was their weekly buff book. That's for the lunatics that didn't want to wait every month for a car magazine. They had to have
Loved it.
Yeah. So at least it wasn't a daily, it was a weekly.
Yeah, you got a
So
little
that's
bit.
why I'm so awful on deadlines for Donald now, because I'm just loving having a whole month now. But no, that was total insanity. But I was a Ford guy, and growing up, my dad had as a cop drove Chevys in Plymouth. The last thing in the world he wanted to do when he got home was drive a Chevy or a Plymouth. So he drove Fords and Mercurys, and my brother raced everything under the sun from 55 shoebox Chevys with Corvette motors in them. But he settled on a big Merc and a 312 and a Y block, and that's how I busted my knuckles and got into the car thing. But at Auto Week, we were scurried away after a while. Ford developed a group called SVT, and they didn't want Ford engineers or marketing people. They wanted car people. So they developed a mercenary. They hired an agency to go out and find mercenaries. And they stole people from all kinds of magazines. I mean, people from Car and Driver, Road and Track, Sports Car International, with several of us from Auto Week. My boss, who was in PR, Jim Sawyer, was my managing editor. And the question is, Tony, writing seemed more glorious back then when you worked at a Buff Book, and companies would send you to the coast of Italy to drive Ferraris. Now it's like you're a blogger or something. Back then it was cool. Why would you quit being I was 165 pounds when I started being a writer, and had all those steaks all over the place. And the problem was the offer to work at Ford and to be part of the Ford special vehicle team, to build high performance variants of Mustangs. It's a dream job. So I jumped, and 10 years there, I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, and got my teeth on doing marketing, because I'm not much of a marketer. I'm more of just a car guy. And for once I started the writing, this is just as the internet started. So I transitioned from SVT News, which was my newsletter, into the web, and developed svt.ford.com, which eventually, when I left, had 3.7 million unique visitors a year. So it was a big deal. But by doing that, I realized one thing, that this whole hobby falls apart without hobbyists, without people, collectors and fans and enthusiasts. So when SVT was disbanded, I moved over to racing. I quickly brought with me the SVT Club and something called the Mustang and Thunderbird Club Center, which Ford had a relationship with club people. And I convinced my bosses, now that SVT was gone and my job there was pretty much done, to develop a platform where we can communicate with enthusiasts, because they're brand disciples and they sell more Fords than advertising. So I don't know how I was able to do that, Tony. It wasn't easy. And at the time, they let me have one foot in that world, because I used to write for SVT Enthusiast magazine. I published and in my home office did all the SVT Enthusiasts even after I left. SVT was disbanded and the club lived on. And then I still wrote for Mustang Enthusiast magazine, Mustang and Ford Trader. I think Donald got me in once to Mustang Monthly. But I mean, those were the magazines you want to write for. And Ford let me keep that foot in the enthusiast world to write, just so I have that connection. So I was a really unique kind of position, because nobody who works in marketing can write a column and say what they want to say. And Donald lets me write a column, and I say the most god-awful things. And at the bottom it says, these are views of John Clor and not Ford Motor Company, because otherwise I wouldn't be talking to you as a Ford employee. So what I had to do was recreate the job like kind of Madonna. I recreated myself and launched a program where we could interact with clubs and enthusiasts. And back at Auto Week, I had a lot of writers. I remember Brad was selling content for the back page. It was called Escape Road. And you just know all the writers. And the only thing I ever wanted in my whole life for Christmas was Donald Farr's original Boss book. But after that $10 paperback became $10. What the? Well, he's the only guy I know who could turn a little paperback into a gold mine. So,
yeah, right. My books are a gold mine.
So this whole program started with, hey, well, if you're good at dealing with clubs with SVT, you could do the Bullitt, and how I got involved with you, Tony, and the Bullitt heads and Imbach, and become the liaison between Ford and the clubs. Well, I also have people that knew me from the media, and they'd say, John, I called Ford Public Affairs, they won't help me. Or I called Ford Archives, they won't help me. Like, I was supposed to be, even though I don't get paid for it, and that's not my deliverable, helping other enthusiasts. So quickly I became more of a conduit person. So why anybody even knows about John Clor is stunning to me, because I kind of worked in the background. I'm just connecting people. Yeah, when Tony Alonso called and said he wasn't at the Detroit Auto Show for the reveal of the Bullitt, like I have auto show passes, you know? Like how in the hell is that going to happen? You didn't invite Brad Bowling. How is that possible? You know, so I just work behind the scenes. Nobody really knows the stuff I do because I care about this stuff. That's all. And, you know, my boss gets mad when I help authors. And why are you doing that? You know, that's not you're charging us time for that? You know, no, I'm doing it on Jenny's. I'm supposed to be cutting the grass. You know. So when the call came in and I knew Brad's backstory, and the reason I've known Brad for many years, and the reason I appreciated what he did is because can you imagine a journalist today getting a super hot story like in the Mustang world, what was hotter than Bullitt, and getting that hot story and then agreeing to sit on it and not reveal the identity? I mean, you know, that's class. That's a real journalist. They don't make them like that. So that's why when this all came down and I had the opportunity I got a crazy phone call and they said, come look at a Bullitt. Yeah, another one. I think that was the third call I had in the 10 years. And you know, the two of them were washes, but this one sounded right. And they just wanted me to come out and validate the car. And I'm not Kevin Marty. And I wouldn't put my name on that car unless I had it Kevin Marty. So I said, why don't we invite Kevin Marty to look at the car? And they said, who's Kevin Marty? So I knew I was in trouble. And that's how I got involved with Bullitt, and Tony with you and with the stuff we did for Imbach. And now as the enthusiast communications guy, you know, I'm still blessed to be able to have one wood cool print magazine left, Mustang Times. And I know Donald, I owe you a column on Monday. It'll be worth the wait like they all are, Donald.
Yeah, it'll be late. It'll be late.
No.
Sorry, John, didn't mean to get you in trouble.
I know I'm going to be in trouble, but I should be writing right now, Tony, but I'm talking Bullitt.
You should be. You should be.
You're done, John. Can you get off and start writing?
I know the bottom line is that just working behind the scenes, trying to connect the Kiernans with Ford, because you might think it's real easy. And when I had finally thought I passed the handoff and put it right in the running back's gut, it was fumbled immediately. And Sean and Ford didn't get along, didn't see eye to eye. If it weren't for there was a Ford director, a guy named Mike Berardi, who said, how could you guys flub this? And he picked up the ball. So there are people working behind the scenes to make sure that the real story does get out. And I was just standing in the background, and the only reason I was even talked to is because Sean came up to me, and I believe it was the guy, I'm sure it was the guys from the
Kevin Horseman, yeah.
That's it. They came over and they said, hey, you know, if it weren't for you, I don't think we'd be here tonight. And one of the writers I happen to know who worked at Road and Track came up, Rich Sepos, who worked with me at SVT for a while. So what is he talking about? And I said, oh, it's a long story and nobody really cares, because it wasn't in the stories that were out there. And, you know, and it's really not about me. It was about, hey, it happened. There's the car, you know. And that's how I got involved. And I was really happy to do that. Brad was there. Tony, that you were there. And unlike, you know, Brad kind of owned this the way I saw it, kind of the way Donald owned the Boss. You know, Donald and I have our own history with that. I kind of like wipe book boogers on other people. Because when I was actually writing the Boss book, I had interviewed Parnelli. I went to Laguna Seca, did tons of research, and then I see Donald at Carlisle. And he goes, you know what I'm going to do, John? I'm going to rewrite my Boss book. And what? So Donald and I had to sign NDAs and just say, look, Donald, we're going to come out with a new Boss Mustang. And if there's going to be one guy to write that book, it ain't going to be me. It's got to be Donald Farr. So in that book, you'll see it says John Clor taking a back seat. He's the guy, just like Brad's the guy for Bullitt. Now with you, Tony, taking up the club world, Bullitt is in a different world in the club world with your book than the way Brad had presented it in the magazine world. Because to us, Brad was working in, that's a different audience. So you're really at the grassroots, the guys that have to have every little sentence of what happened. It's way more detailed than what you're doing than when Brad and I were working at magazines or writing for magazines. It's more, you know, hey, slam bam, thank you, man, going to the next story, except for the Bullitt, because I'll share one story with you, and then Donald has to explain how in the hell he launched so many careers. You know, I try to connect people, and I think a lot of people that have gone through me and been connected, and now they're in the hobby, and I don't want any credit for it. I just want people in the hobby, because I think that's what keeps the Mustang. That's why the Mustang hobby is cool. And there are some people who will, step on you on the way to the top and take everything you give them and never look back. And other people like you guys who say, hey, you know what? Thanks for helping, and thanks for making this what it is. So when Donald and I had a little discussion about doing this boss book, and I said, you know what? It's time that, Tony, when you had your chance with the Mach 1 and now with this book, that these stories need to be told. And I got to tell you, for me, it's the most important part of the hobby, is just to give the enthusiast the inside story. And it's still difficult working at Ford. It's so hard to get in touch with retirees and to connect the people that made their cars and the people that bought them and collect them. Is the hardest job I've ever had to do. And I'm just so glad that you guys were able to pull this off. And I can just tell you, the Bullitt to me was always the coolest thing, but I never really realized how important it was to Ford until the S550 was an export model, and we brought the Chinese media over to Detroit. When that happened, they asked me to go give them a 30-minute history lesson on the Mustang, and I sat at the Automotive Hall of Fame in a little IMAX theater with 40 journalists from China and 2 interpreters. And Donald, I was giving him my best stuff, some of that really good stuff I had to say for the MCA show. And I turned to the interpreter and I said, is this thing on? I mean, nobody's even smiling out there. I had some good stuff. And she said, no, everything's good. So I finally got to the Bullitt, and I threw a picture up there of Steve McQueen and the original Bullitt. And that's when the silence broke after 20 minutes. These Chinese journalists who didn't speak English jumped out of their seats and took their cell phones, and they started clicking my slide on the screen, yelling, Bullitt, Bullitt, Bullitt. And I thought to myself, what's going on? What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, is that the Bullitt was black marketed overseas as a movie. And after I talked to one of the Chinese journalists who actually could speak English, and we had a great conversation, he said, to them, that personified what the Ford Mustang was. That was the American coolness, the Mustang. That to them, that's their whole vision of Mustang. With that one black marketed movie back then, they never even saw a real Mustang in China, after all those years. But that'll teach you the power of a car that has this kind of legacy, and why it was so important that Brad got involved. And like I said, Donald, I don't know how you continue to crank out your stuff and make people superstars, but you're continuing to do that. And now, Tony, God knows you'll forget all of the little people you stepped on the way there.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I'm sure, John. I'm sure I will. Goodness, thank you. I enjoy your stories, and I enjoy the fact that it might be the hardest job you do to connect Ford with the greater enthusiast community, but you certainly made an impression on a lot of people, and
Well, that's
thank
important.
you.
Donald and I share stories, and I write a lot of things in the column that I shouldn't. Donald, I should have been fired years ago. Let's say.
Yeah, Donald, I appreciate you hanging on to him, and it's
Yeah,
a good set. Yeah,
no, he knows the perils of what we do. And Tony, just so that you know, there at that day that the car was at the auto show, there were young Ford marketing people who don't understand Bullitt or Mustang. We get really brilliant minds from the best schools out east, Ivy League schools, and number 2 in their class. And some young lady came up to me and she said, you're this guy that's supposed to know a little bit about the Mustang? I said, well, I wrote a couple books. It was in a Hollywood movie. I was on the History Channel. Does that count? And she said, I have a question. See those cars up there? I said, yeah. She says, why is that rusty car next to our new Bullitt?
Yep.
We're facing?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you keep it real for all those folks, John. Thank you. And you keep it real for Donald. And so I definitely want to ask Donald to say a few words, because I'll tell you, here's the way I knew that who Donald was. Donald, one time, a long time ago, you wouldn't remembered me, but when I was at Carlisle and you're selling your boss book, I bought one and you signed it for me. And I thought it was the greatest thing, because that's how I knew you from various publications and things you've done, but I know you as the boss guy, the boss 302 guy in particular, just like, Brad's the Bullitt guy, and John's the guy that knows everyone at Ford and can hook them up, right? And your books, what John's written, certainly what Brad has written, I've read them and they've been influential to read your writing. So I know I asked you if you wouldn't mind through connection with Brad if you'd be one of the early readers. So you got to see the pretty polished up edition of the book. So I'd love to have you share a few stories about how you got to doing what you're doing and launching all these careers, and of course your time to read this book a little bit on the Mustang Bullitt feature cars.
Yeah, well, I was, right place at the right time back in the late 70s when the Mustang hobby, as we have come to know it, was just in its infancy. And I was taking pictures and writing for Shelby American Automobile Club at first. And then I got hooked up with Larry Dobbs at Mustang Monthly. And, kind of off we went. And Larry was in the right place at the right time doing the right magazine. Just as far as I know, it might have been the first niche magazine of any car. So people were like us who liked Mustang. We were tired of flipping through Hot Rod and Carcraft every month trying to find a Mustang or even a Ford story. So here we were given nothing but Mustang stories. So Larry hit a home run, and I was fortunate enough to be along for the ride. And as part of that, I don't remember, it was probably in the 80s when I heard from Anthony Bologna. Did I pronounce his name right? He did a story for me about being on the set and on the street when they were filming Bullitt. And that seemed to hit a nerve. Back in those days before emails, we got phone calls and actual letters, and we got a few. And that told me that was something that hit a nerve. And so I'll touch on Brad a little bit. I knew Brad when he was a kid, carrying a camera around a MCA show at Pensacola, I believe. Is that when we met, Brad, at Pensacola?
It was exactly Pensacola. And I have to tell, it was 1980, like around 5 or 6. And I was just starting to do some things for Mustang Monthly. Trying to. I don't know if I'd even sold you my first article yet, but I was, working on my photography and my writing. And I had my girlfriend, Jane, there with me. And you were kind enough to not only take us to lunch at a nice place like Applebee's or something, and I was just all excited. You gave me a handful of film, which back then was a big deal because it was super expensive, especially for a college student. And you rode us around showing how you could use a parking lot for a photo shoot, and how when you were driving your car, you could pull over and open the door and look down and see which way the sun was going. And I was just so excited. I thought this is like the coolest thing anybody's ever shown me. I didn't get any of this in college. But yeah, that was Pensacola.
Okay. I remember Pensacola. I didn't remember all those details, but I'm glad you do. Yeah. But I do remember meeting you there and you expressing your enthusiasm for pursuing journalism about cars. So that's, I was only a few years into my career at that point. So I'm glad I helped you out, Brad. Look at you now.
Yeah.
And so I followed Brad, of course. He went to Saleen. And you remember me coming out to visit you that time, Brad? And you were in an apartment. I think all you had was a mattress and a plate and a bar stool. So and I don't want to bore the crap out of everybody here, but you and I are huge Beatles fans. And do you remember why you came over? It was because I had a bootleg copy of a copy that Jay Leno had recorded at NBC on VHS.
and it was the Ed Sullivan Beatles appearances. And you and I sat and watched that, like, I don't know, maybe 3 times or something. And it was scratchy and wavy and everything, but we just had the best time with that.
Yeah, that was the first time I'd seen the Beatles Ed Sullivan performance since, I first saw it in '64. So that was great. Well, thank you for that too, Brad. But
Okay.
another thing I thank you for was I think you contacted me when I was back at Mustang Monthly to tell me that you had run across the Bullitt Mustang. I don't remember exactly how all that happened, and but you told me you could not reveal who the owner was, and I agreed that that was great. It was a neat way to present the story, and you did that story for me, and we stayed in touch, and with a magazine like Mustang Monthly that was on the newsstand, I knew within months that, and I think it was on the cover, wasn't it? I believe it was on the cover. Anyway, newsstand sales went up that month. So that was my barometer that something was popular. So Brad and I stayed in touch about the car, and I think like everybody, we didn't know for sure that it was the real car, but at some point, and Brad and I talked about this at Mecum, I had learned about Kevin Marty getting the Ford database. So I maybe Brad had called me, or I contacted him, and I said, Brad, do you have the VIN number for this car? And if you don't mind sharing it with me, I will send it to Kevin Marty, which he did. And I sent to Kevin, and Kevin got right back with me and said, yeah, there were 2 cars, identical, Highland green, and I forget where they went, to Warner Brothers. I don't remember it. Whatever, it indicated that they were movie cars. And so that was kind of the clue to me that, okay, this is for real. And at some point you wrote another story for me, and newsstand sales went up again. So thanks for making me look good, Brad.
Yeah.
Publishers always like that. The newsstand.
Sure.
Well,
I can tell you right now, Donald, they went to Midway Ford sales in Los Angeles. Both cars did.
Yeah. So we tied it in. They went to Los Angeles, and we
pickup place.
So that's my little piece of the '68 Bullitt until later. But going back to the boss thing, I gotta thank John Clor for a lot of what I'm doing now, because he invited me up, took me to lunch, shared with me about the 2012 Boss 302, and told me to be quiet about it or I'd never be seen again, and said, why don't you redo your Boss book and add the new book to it? And so I wouldn't have done, without that connection, without the introduction to motor books, I wouldn't have done the 50th anniversary Mustang book, the speed read, all the books I've done for motor books in the past few years. Without John putting me down that path, I would, I'd just still be here being a poor bass player in a local band or something.
Well,
Yeah, I forgot to mention that you're kind of a rock star on the side with your bass guitar playing. So it's very cool.
No, cars and rock music, right? What goes better? And Donald, you're going to be mentioned, with October 4th, the 50th anniversary of Parnelli's victory with the Boss 302 and the 70 Trans Am. I pulled an excerpt out of your book, and it's running this week on FordPerformance.com, and thank you very much for that. And I did give a plug for the Boss 50 years of Boss, and it's a great book. If you haven't gotten that, get that. But Tony, I got to tell you, Donald has become prolific at this. I made great friends with Gail Halderman and spent 10 years assembling all of his stories, and I had wonderful stories. I mean, I had a mic on me. I sat with Sperlich with 2.5 hours of tape recordings with just the 3 of us at the Dearborn Country Club. And I was ready to write it, and I never got around to it. And then Gail finally jumped on a relative of his to get the book done. Thank God they got it done and didn't wait for me, because Gail passed away this past April. But that's why I think it's important to get, put the right people in the right jobs. And, when it comes to, Donald deserved way more book time than he was getting, and motor books was the best way. I'm doing about 80 hours a week. I can't spend time doing that. So for you guys, the beauty is the hobby. And Tony, what you're doing, bringing all those super hard stories, trying to get, for guys like, for example, a guy like Paul Randall, everybody bet me I would never get Paul Randall be able to talk to you, Tony. And he was a hard sell. It's like I'll never get John Coletti to get out of retirement and talk about SVT. But Paul Randall, that was a tough one. And when you keep, you give me these impossible things to do, which has nothing to do with my job. And, that's why your book and what you're bringing to the Bullitt lover is all this inside stuff with people just eat up. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, Tony, when, you asked me to read the book, and I guess that's what I do. A lot of people think about me writing books. I also edit books. I spend half my time editing John's column. But
I could understand who you're working with.
So, your book was an easy read. It was right on. It was spot on for what the enthusiasts, for what the Bullitt owners, for what I thought they were looking for. Just like when I did my original Boss book, I wasn't writing it for me. I was writing it for the people out there who were interested in those cars. And that's exactly what I saw in your book. All the neat details and all the backstories. That's what enthusiasts and owners want to see. And that's what you accomplished.
Well, I thank you. I certainly couldn't have done it without the collaborative efforts with each one of you. And I wanted the people who are here to hear how all of those things played out so that you did play that role. And, again, it's fantastic. That was the intent, is do it for the hobby. And this is a period of Mustang history that I've lived through. I was born the year after it came out, so I couldn't appreciate the first or even the second generation. And but Fox bodies, I started to understand, and then of course when I actually started buying Mustangs, and I've followed Bullitt since 2000 when the concept car came out. So again, I owe a great deal of gratitude to each of you for the parts you've played. And I love hearing each of you share your stories. And if I could be a photographer like Brad, or possibly John, I call you the mayor because you're going out and working the crowds. If I could be the mayor like John, or I could be a rock star like Donald and play guitar.
And shoot and write and edit. What the heck? Where was I in line when they're handing out talent? Come on. Wait a second.
Yeah, I know. That all goes, that goes without saying. But all that other cool stuff, I mean, I just, again, so appreciative of that. I wanted to open the floor up and thank you guys, each one of you, for sharing phenomenal stuff. For the recording, this will go up on my book website, so folks will be able to. So they'll catch you again, John, probably misbehaving, be recorded. And I want to give folks a chance to ask any of you guys, questions based on what's been shared tonight. And again, I sincerely appreciate you spending the time to do this for me. So let me open up the floor for some questions for Brad, John, or Donald. So please go ahead.
Hey, I have a question for Brad, John, and Donald. How hard was it for you guys to keep it from the public that you found the Bullitt? I mean, 18 years, that's a stretch.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything because Brad didn't tell me anything. So,
yeah, but
I appreciated Brad being able to do that. I wasn't going to ask him to. We could have made a big story. Obviously, we said Bullitt
right.
revealed, But as it turned out, it worked out for the best.
Yeah.
Not saying it for 18 years.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a big secret, Brad.
well, and you know, a lot of people have asked me about that, and at first I had to think about it. After 28 years of keeping the secret, it had not actually occurred to me to come up with an answer as to how I kept it for that long. But once I thought about it, I realized that it wasn't really my secret to tell, and I had promised, you know, Bob that I wouldn't tell. So I knew that if I did, you know, put the story out there that his family owned it and whatnot, I could see the headline was, you know, Bullitt Mustang revealed to public, and then the subhead under that would be Big Jerk breaks secret to family. So
Yeah, probably, right?
No,
yeah, that would be the second story would be, you know, them being mad at me for the rest of my life. So it worked out okay. But yeah, I have to admit, it was kind of like a romance. It was exciting at first, and then you know, then after a while I was getting a little paranoid, like, is this guy just pulling my leg? Have I been duped here? Have I been, you know, am I going to look like an idiot someday when,
Right.
you know, he turns out to be the next Hitler diary guy or whatever, you know, with something he made up out there. And
Brad,
and then after a while, we didn't even talk anymore. I mean, after like 2001 or 2, we didn't talk anymore. I didn't really hear from him. So it was kind of like a romance that went, you know, stale after a while. And I thought, I hope someday this thing comes out in public, but I don't guess I'll be there to be a part of it.
well, Brad, that's why this is deserving, at least, and Tony giving you props for that. It doesn't happen in our industry. If anybody that worked at a magazine can tell you about embargoes, and you get some really great secret information, and they give you an embargo date. And throughout my history at Auto Week, all of the whole decade I worked there, people were breaking embargo. Our publisher said, you're never going to be the first writer to break an embargo, but you're never going to be number three either. So as soon as it's broken, it's broken. You can't get the toothpaste back from the tube. For me, it was easy, guys, because, you know, working at SVT, I was ahead of 2 years or 3 years ahead of everything we did. You know, we did an SVT Ranger. We did, before we did the F-150 Lightning, we did the SVT Thunderbirds. We were constantly working with stuff. And I'm at the tent at the shows every day and say, hey, what is the new Cobra really going to be supercharged? And like, if I say something, that's the end. I'm out of Ford. That's the end of your career. I know too many guys that have been walked out of the company. So that's why when I wanted to talk to Donald so bad, and you're writing your boss book, and I'm writing a boss book, what idiot would go into market with a boss book about the new Boss 2 with Donald Farr coming out with his remake of the Bible? Those things aren't right. Now, the universe, he had to have that book. So these guys that you're talking to tonight, Brad and Donald, are just cut from a different cloth than today's quote unquote journalists, you know, who would burn you on a story. I just been burned on. I had a secret photos of a couple of Mustangs that were never identified, and Jalopnik busted the story by going through archives and Ford Public Affairs. There's no honor among men and now among thieves anymore. They'll be stealing your idea and ripping off Brad's story because he was quiet, and taking all Donald's photos and repurposing them elsewhere when Donald shot every one of those. That's the way the world is nowadays. So
Yeah.
I'm just honored to be on with both you guys. You're just real. You're the real deal.
So Brad,
Thank you for
how
that,
long after you talked to Bob and found he had the Bullitt, how long before you actually saw the car in person?
That would be 28 years.
Oh my God.
So I did several times. When I would talk to Bob, I would say, Bob, you know, it's been like, you know, 8 years now. I've kept the secret. I've worked with you on stories. You know, I'm a, you know, pretty upright guy. You don't live too far from me. I could get there in a few hours. I knew by then he was living in Tennessee, and because he moved around a lot during those 28 years. And I said, just let me come see the car. I won't take a picture. If you don't want me to tell people I've seen it, I won't tell anybody, whatever. And he was like, well, I don't think so. And, you know, now I can look back and see a lot of what was going on with him and his family. And, you know, I also realized the car was not in great shape for a lot of years. It was not in one piece for a lot of years. They had sort of started working on it and started this, and you know how it is with car projects. You have good intentions when you start, and really that's probably for the best, because you know, if they had looked at it as a car that needed restoring, they probably, you know, if they'd gone into it, they probably would have wiped out every bit of history that car has, and instead they retained it. So yeah, it was kind of painful for me, but yeah, I didn't see it for 28 years. I was like, Bob, can you just take a picture of it and send it to me? Can you draw a picture of it and send it to me? But he was pretty tight-lipped about it. And I think, you know, honestly, I've thought about this a lot in the last couple of years. Now, you know, now that I can really talk to Sean Kiernan and you know, pick his brain about some things. And I did not realize how much I probably oversold to him the idea of the Bullitt cars, the surviving cars significance. I mean, yes, everybody in the hobby wanted to find it. Most people would love to have, you know, bought it from him for a good price and had it and whatnot. But probably in my enthusiasm, in my, I don't know how old I would have been then, 25, maybe year-old enthusiasm out of college, I probably oversold the idea and may have even scared him off a little bit with my enthusiasm. So I may have muddied the water on my situation right away. Maybe if I'd been really slick about it on the phone, been like, hey, Bob, you know, I'm kind of looking for an old Mustang to fix up, you know.
Yeah. Right.
Maybe I'd be having some of that Donald Farr money right now.
Just a poor book author.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Charlie, for the question.
Yeah.
Other questions? We got time for a couple more shorter ones.
I'll take one for Brad.
Yeah, go ahead.
The elder Mr. Kiernan, did he ever give you like any real indication as to why he never really wanted to get into the limelight? Was he just really a super, super private person? Or, because that seems to me like if he would have just gone out and put it out there at the beginning, people kind of would have left him alone and not bothered him over the years and years and years and years and years.
Yeah, I really, even before I had a chance to meet Sean and talk to him about his father at great detail, I had a feeling pretty early on that Bob was a very private person, and that he was just a very different kind of guy. Sean will tell you that. He was a very interesting person, did his own thing, didn't care about, you know, other people's opinions about things and whatnot. And, you know, before the internet came along, you know, let's say like the mid 90s, when people were starting to, you know, get more active in chat rooms and such as that, Bob really had just my word for it, you know, on the phone that this was a big story and, you know, I'd like to work with him. And he probably also thought that that was the last he was going to hear of me and, you know, any enthusiasm for the Bullitt car. So it's hard to look back on that. One thing I mention a lot, I think everybody probably knows this, but it bears repeating sometimes, is that, you know, we used to live in a time where cars, you know, a car came out and it was either like a race car or a movie car or had some sort of notoriety for a bit. And then, like, as soon as that race was over, as soon as that movie was over, the value, the interest in it just plummeted. You know, you've probably seen, you know, articles about Ferrari race cars or Cobras or any number of NASCAR, especially with their stock cars all through the 60s and 70s and even in the early 80s, were still just like, well, the race is over and this one wrecked, let's push it off in a ditch and run a bulldozer over it. You know, they had no interest in something that had history. You know, it was all about, well, our next, you know, we're trying to sell the next car at Ford Motor Company, or, you know, Steve McQueen's not the big box office star anymore, let's move on. And so, you know, there's just this downhill with those kind of cars as far as the interest and the value goes, that, you know, Bob, when he bought that car, that probably was the least, you know, the very bottom of that car's value in terms of anybody wanting it, other than a few, you know, real hardcore Mustang folks. And by the time I talked to him in 1989, he, you know, he had seen one article about it, you know, in a magazine, and that's when he and I wound up getting in touch with each other. So it was a different deal. Looking back, it is so hard to imagine. The first article I wrote about it, I started it by saying, you know, it's with hindsight, it's hard for us to believe in 1989, you know, modern times, that, you know, this car in a movie would someday be, you know, the most sought after vehicle in the Mustang or maybe even muscle car world. But, you know, here it is, and we know where it is now. And it's hard to remember that time when, if you didn't read that magazine, that issue, you might not even know for a long time that this car had been found and was being talked about. So the internet changed everything. That's my point.
Thank you so much.
Let's wait until I find Farrah Fawcett's Cobra 2. Holy cow.
Yeah,
I'm
there
like,
you go.
And Dan, Brad, you're going to print that book for me. And Donald, you're going to edit. Because you've edited more Mustang 2 copy than any human on earth.
Yeah, is that your next column about Farrah Fawcett's Cobra 2? Where you can find it?
No, I can't even find Jim Morrison's GT500, so I'm not good at finding stuff. I'm good at losing stuff.
Yeah, they go right under our noses.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, John Clor hasn't gotten enough credit, I guess, on this phone call yet. But John and I met in Michigan at the Kalamazoo Gilmore Museum during an event there, and talked, had a really good time, had a lot in common. John said, you know, if you're ever over in Detroit, you know, come see me at Auto Week. And I don't know, I tried to keep it cool. You know, I tried to have my poker face going, but I was like, come to visit Auto Week. That's like, you know, come to visit the gods and watch them reclining on their, you know, their sofas, eating grapes, you know, and stuff. And I beat a hasty path over there. I think I was over there in like a month. And just John spent the day with me at Auto Week. I was so excited. And they didn't offer me a job. Still waiting. John.
I didn't take you to Applebee's as Donald Farr did, because I wasn't eating good in the neighborhood down there.
Yeah. But yeah, that was, you know, even though I'd been in the business for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years or so, at that point, my subscription to Auto Week was like 12 to 14 years old. I mean, I'd gotten it every single week and just could not believe some of the people I was meeting.
Old Cars Weekly and never missed a beat. After I met you, I was a regular reader. So thank you, Brad. No, what you guys do, I tell you, you guys don't see what goes on, but there's a certain group of people that just want the real stories to be told, and the fact that some of us can help, that's great, because Tony, God knows I wasn't going to have any time until Donald quit asking me for a column every 2 weeks. Like this stuff, I don't just put 10 minutes in a column. I spend like 4 days writing a column. So Tony, I don't know how you do it, seriously. Yeah, you know, when you do my Mustang 2 book, and Brad's he's gonna definitely publish it, and Donald will have Boss 75 Years book will be out.
Can I edit your Mustang 2 book?
Please. Because the one I tell with the Mark Cranswick guy, I just talked to Dick Nesbitt about some of that. There's a video out by a guy named Robert Kennedy on YouTube who talked Adapt or Die video, and I'm telling you, there's a lot of Mustang story yet to be told, even after all these years, Donald. Yeah. There's so much myth, and there's just, you know, the only reason I wrote Dynasty, there's just so much wrong, and I didn't know it until I worked at Ford. And when you talk to the Gail Haldermans and the Hal Sperlicks, that's when you get to, you know, you get an epiphany. So the fact that Anthony was able to bring the Bullitt to light, even though we had to lend 1,000 other people to help, that's all well and good, because these stories need to be out.
Thank you so much, each one of you. I sincerely not only appreciate each of you and your contributions to my book, but also to the hobby at large. And I really want to make sure that you guys get all of the recognition that is well deserved in terms of making us a reality here. So I want to go ahead and close out the meeting here. And I'll say one last thing to each of you. Just keep on doing what you guys are doing, and look forward to your continued influence, impact, and positive effect for all of us here in the enthusiast realm. And keep on being enthusiasts yourself too, of course.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks for being with everybody. Good to see you all.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Thanks,
Thank
Brad.
y'all for listening.
John.
Yep.
Very nice meeting you guys and talking to you
Yeah.
tonight.
Thanks for
Thank
the
you so much.
opportunity to hear your wisdom.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a good evening.
You too. Dave, it was nice talking
Bye.
to you.
See you next week.
Talking with you. Okay.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye, Tony. Thank you so much for tonight.
You
Have a
bet.
great night, Tony.
Thank you. You guys all too.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.